Hello, I'm Stephen Missick. I want to talk about Michael Berry and Michael Berry's big mistake. Michael Berry put out some disinformation on his radio program today. I was actually surprised. I was kind of surprised to hear such disinformation coming from Michael Berry. So what's going on is we have the rodeo coming up, and he was talking to some kind of Australian cowboy, I guess, who's coming to this area for the rodeo. I didn't catch the whole segment. I just listened to this one part where he's talking about the name Thomas. Actually, I have family with the last name of Thomas. But Thomas is a very significant name in India. And why is that? Well, Michael Berry does not know. So he made a mistake. The name Thomas is a very popular name among Indian Christians, especially in the south of India, in Kerala, probably also in Tamil Nadu. Why is that? So Michael Berry's put out some disinformation or misinformation, whatever you want to call it, and he says it's because in South India, American missionaries went to South India and converted some people, especially in Kerala. So he's saying that after their conversion, they started taking on biblical names like Thomas and Matthew and other names like that. Now, it is true that Indian Christians, especially in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, in that area, do take names like Thomas and other biblical names. But it isn't because that American missionaries went and converted them to Christianity. It's because, especially the name Thomas, it's because Thomas went to India. I have here the ancient Aramaic Acts of the Apostles. And you can see here, this is one of the, it's from, they started writing the Apocryphal Acts of the Apostles, that's what you want to call them, around the year 150. And the author was supposed to have been Lucius Charinus, one of the disciples of John. And here we have in the Aramaic, it says Praxis or Acts, Yehuda, Jude or Judah, Toma, Shlicha. The Acts of Jude Thomas, the apostle. So this is the story of Thomas evangelizing India. That's the ancient tradition, and this account of Thomas evangelizing India is dated from the year, I think, 180 to 225 or so. So it's a very ancient story, and this is a book about Aramaic Christianity. It's called The Syriac World, and we have a whole chapter here. And I've been to India. We have a whole chapter here about the church, the Syrian or Aramaic or Syriac Christians of South India. So this isn't. I mean, these ruins you see depicted here are not. I mean, they're from the 600s, 700s and older. They're not made by Western missionaries. We see ancient inscriptions in Aramaic. So it's not Western Christians that came introduced Christianity in India. When the European explorers arrived in India, they found Christian churches there already. So if you don't know who Michael Berry is really quick, I guess he was on Houston City Council and he went into conservative talk radio. And I have to sing Michael Berry's praises. I have to honestly say, he became, unfortunately for like a year or so, he was a never-Trumper. And I almost just started turning him off. But as of right now, after the passing of Rush Limbaugh, I think just without argument, in my opinion, Michael Berry is the best conservative talk show host out there. I do not like Clay and Buck because I was at January 6th, paid a heavy price for it, but that's okay. I serve in the military. I'm willing to die for my country. And when we see massive voter fraud, I took a stand against it, and I have no regrets, even though they tried to. I guess they have ruined my life, but be it as it may, I do not appreciate Clay and Buck on the radio demonizing January 6ers like myself. I find that highly offensive and perpetuating lies and falsehoods about January 6th, the 2020 election on their radio program. So I listen to Michael Berry because he's a great guy, and I know every once in a while they put him on the Clay and Buck show. Good for him, because it's good for him to have a greater exposure because he's a good guy. He's also married to an Indian woman. I think she's from Hyderabad, and I did some outreach and sort of missionary work in Hyderabad. I got to preach over there. What do we feed our mind?
అంటే మన మనసుని దేనితో పోషించుకుంటున్నాం, దేని నింపుతున్నాం?
We feed our mind the word of God.
దేవుని యొక్క వాక్యమునే మన హృదయంలో మన మనసులో నింపుకోవాలి. దేవునికి స్తోత్రం. ఆమేన్. ఆమేన్.
Not the things of this world.
లోకంలోని విషయాలు కాదు కానీ
we walk the path of Jesus, the path of life.
మనం జీవమైనటువంటి యేసుక్రీస్తు యొక్క మార్గమును నడుస్తున్నాం. I
think they speak Telugu, which is a language. So I've been to India twice. And the first time I just had an opportunity to go when I went and I preached the gospel in India. The second time I was trying to retrace the steps of St. Thomas. Actually, the reason why I went to India is because I was going to go and fight against, in a way I was able to, ISIS in northern Iraq. And I didn't want people to know I was going to northern Iraq. I wanted people to think I was going on a missionary trip to India to retrace the steps of the 12 apostles, which I did do. But I was trying to distract people. Oh yes, I'm going to India to trace the steps of the Apostle Thomas, because they have these traditions of, Thomas went here and went there. I think there's 7 churches. There's actually 12 churches, 7 churches, and they call the places that don't have the full stature of a status of a church founded by Thomas, they call them half churches. So I think there's 12 sites in all. If you include the place in Tamil Nadu where Thomas is martyred. And it's interesting. I went to this mountain. It's like all night long, I climbed the top of this mountain where it's one of the places Thomas ministered. And I got to the top, and they carry these massive crosses up there and erect them at the top of this mountain. And I was talking to people there, and there's pilgrimages, a very big pilgrimage site in Kerala, and there were a lot of Christians from Tamil Nadu, because that's it's called Chennai now. It used to be called Madras. That's where Thomas is believed to have been martyred. So Michael Berry has an Indian wife, and I thought he'd know a lot about India, and I guess he does, and he's probably been there more than I have. I've only been there twice. But he did not know Thomas in India. So, actually, my family name, I'm Missick, but I have Thomas, my grandfather's Thomas, but that's from the, I think they're the Scotch-Irish part of my family, which is most of my family. I got a Hungarian last name, but that's where most of my family comes from. So it's not an uncommon name among American people, Thomas. By the way, Dinesh just reviewed a book called Albion Seed that talks about the various branches of people from England who settled in America, and like my family. And the only one I could really identify was with the Scotch-Irish, who were basically rednecks, good people. Thomas in India. So we've seen these accounts. If you want to know the story of Thomas in India, I have my book I wrote, which is based on the ancient accounts. It's called The Further Acts of the Apostles According to Abdias of Babylon, Disciple of Jesus Christ, compiled and composed by me, Dr. Stephen Andrew Missick. And I wrote it, and I illustrate it like I did the drawing on the cover. And I'm working on a study guide, and this is some drawings. This is Saint Mygdonia, the convert of Thomas. So I think it's very important, the further Acts of the Apostles, and I try to make this information accessible to a general reading audience. So I have this book out. Abdias of Babylon, traditionally, the tradition is Abdias of Babylon, which is Abdias, the Greek way of saying Obadiah, that he's one of the 70. Jesus had 12 apostles and 72 disciples, and Abdias is one of the 72. He evangelized Babylonia with Simon and Jude, and after their martyrdom, he wrote an account of their lives and the lives of all the 12 apostles. This is tradition, but I'm sure it goes back to the 1st century. And the traditional account of the lives of 12 apostles is attributed to Abdias of Babylon. And that's what I'm trying to make accessible to a wider audience with this book, which I wrote and illustrated. And I'm coming up with a study guide that goes along with this book. I think this book looks very nice. I'm proud of it. And I think this book came out very nice. I'm very proud of it. And I'm a third of the way done, I guess, with the study guide, which I'm going to put out there soon with new art, including Saint Mygdonia and some other pictures that I'm creating for this book. So we need to pray for Christians in India and the Middle East, like when I went to. So what happened? It's the story, just in case you're curious. So, according to these ancient stories, Thomas sends Thaddeus to Edessa, and northern Iraq. And there's a king named Abgar who's healed, and then Thomas goes to Edessa and Parthia. And then from Parthia he goes into India. This is based on these Aramaic stories from the ancient church, the Syrian church of the East. And like I said, this isn't just legend. I mean, people can dispute, did Thomas actually go to India? It's not a historical certitude, it's a historical probability. We have found evidence that there were connections between the Roman Empire and India, and there's also a Greek text called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea about how you could use monsoon winds to get to India quicker. So it seems fanciful. How could one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ get to India? But it's possible. Like I said, it could just be a legend. But we know that Aramaic Christians maintained a church in southern India. And some of them, just like the Zoroastrians, some Assyrian Christians also settled in India. And I got to go there and visit. It's very interesting. So it's interesting, while I was in India, I mean, the services generally are in Malayalam, the local language, which is a Dravidian language, not Aryan. But they actually had the entire service in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. And these texts about these lives of the 12 apostles and other ancient texts that I was referring to are in Aramaic, as I showed you earlier in this program. So it's very important. I think that I was listening to, I think it's Mel Gibson and Joe Rogan, and it's like, I think it's a spiritual thing, honestly. It's like, why do these rich, elitist, white liberals, why are they just so consumed and passionate? They have this mindless, all-consuming hatred of Jesus Christ and Christianity. It's like, well, like I said, it's a spiritual thing. These people are of the devil. That's why they have that. But they're trying to explain it logically. It's like, oh, well, because they hate Western civilization. Why do they hate Western civilization? And they view Christianity as a white European man's religion, and therefore it's bad because everything that white people do is bad and evil and the worst things ever happened in the world from their skewed point of view. But here we see Michael Berry also has two boys who are from Ethiopia, and I'm going to do a follow-up to Abdias because there's the Ethiopic version. Actually, I have it here. This is interesting. This is the Ethiopic version of Abdias of Babylon. You can see the Ethiopic text in here. So this is you can see the Ethiopic text on the top. This is the Ethiopian version of Abdias. Ethiopic Abdias has a lot of the same stories told in the version known in Europe in Latin. According to Abdias, it was written originally in Aramaic or Hebrew, translated to Greek, and then to Latin from there. But this is the Ethiopian version of the Abdias stories. You can see there the Ethiopian text on the top. So I think it's important for us to understand that, I mean, Ethiopia is one of the oldest Christian civilizations on this world. They became Christian 300-400 years or longer before Russia did, and hundreds of years before England became a Christian nation. So this idea of Christianity being the white man's religion is wrong, pretty much obvious because it's a Middle Eastern religion in its conception. But I think we need to understand and appreciate the contributions of the churches and the Christians in India and in Ethiopia. When I was in India, I got to see their library. Now, when the Catholics found Christians, the first thing they did was they called in the Holy Office of the Inquisition, and they started arresting and torturing people for not practicing Roman Catholicism. How are they supposed to know? Yeah, that's right. First time they ever heard anything about Roman Catholicism is when these European explorers got off their boats and came to their churches, and then all of a sudden they're finding themselves arrested and tortured by the Holy Office of the Inquisition and Catholic priests collecting all their old Aramaic texts and burning them all. But they didn't get everything. So thank God. So I went to this, I met with Mar Opram, the Bishop of India, and he showed me the library. And he got some kind of grant to make it climate controlled. And it's like, wow, he's got a lot of, not as, I'm sure, not as compared to what they had before, but he had dozens of books in there that Catholics weren't able to burn. So some things have survived, and I think it's time for Western Christians. I'm a proud evangelical Christian and preacher of the gospel, but I think it's time for us to maybe try to learn things or learn about Christians in the Middle East. I want to talk really quick in conclusion about the Assyrian Christians. So I went to northern Iraq, and I visited. It's funny, they took my passport away from me. If you're going to go into these areas here, you can't have your passport. It's like Kurdish. So I got my passport back, thank God, because I was going to this dangerous zone. And anyway, I went to refugee camps. I was talking to Assyrian Christians who had to just drop everything and run for their lives. When Obama pulled out all of our troops, I served in Iraq twice, and the war was mismanaged. But we won the war. And then Obama squanders all of our gains. The victory we won. American blood shed. And we won. And then Obama, I didn't think he'd do it. I didn't think he's that evil or foolish to do it. He did it. He pulled out every single troop. We just had all we needed was a small, just a few thousand soldiers there to maintain our gains. We didn't need a whole hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of troops there. Just a small crew to keep the peace. But he pulled everything out. And so ISIS, it's a power vacuum. ISIS goes in, and all the Christians had to flee for their lives to so-called Iraqi Kurdistan, the city of Erbil. And I was talking to these people. I mean, once ISIS was coming, they didn't have time to go back to their home and get stuff. They just had to, get in and just start running or get in a vehicle and take off because they're going to kill them. They went and they painted all the ISIS sympathizers painted all the noons, the Arabic letter N for Nazarene all over all the houses. So I was talking to these people. And then when I went there, I was talking to people how, Trump was able to help the Assyrians of northern Iraq. Because not all of them, there's that big pull of immigration, to unite, where they quickly assimilate. These people are still speaking Aramaic. We're allowing ISIS to commit genocide, and one of these oldest Christian communities, an Aramaic-speaking Christian community, founded by St. Thomas and Thaddeus. The whole world community is allowing them to suffer genocide. It's horrible. So I go back, and I went to Iraq again recently, and visiting the local Christians. It's like, yes, things were improving under Trump, and then Biden came in, and all the support gone. The foreign aid is not going to Syrian Christians anymore. All dried up. And not just that, I'm talking about groups like they were helping, like Samaritan's Purse, and they're not able to help anymore because they don't have the support of America, the Trump administration. So they're not able to do what they're able to do. That's not even government money. That's Billy Graham's Evangelistic Association and Franklin Graham trying to help local Christians over there. They're not able to do it because Joe Biden. And what happens? Joe Biden is allowing the Iranian militias to come over there and bully, even kill Christians. So Trump's taken, as I do this video, Trump's taken office again in 10 days. Can't come soon enough. And the Alawite regime in Syria, I lived in Syria. I don't like the Alawite regime, honestly. I'm not sad to see them out of there, but I am disturbed by this Muslim leader taking over. It's disturbing. We'll see what happens. Just pray about the situation. But yeah, we've had very destructive. I was listening. Another thing about Michael Berry is absolutely right. I'm probably related to Jimmy Carter through a cousin of his. It's one of my ancestors, not relatives, I guess. So Jimmy Carter allowed the Shah to topple, and we're in that phase that he started of because his ineptitude, or I don't know, or folly, whatever it is. He started this phase. Think how many, if Jimmy Carter stood behind the Shah and prevented the Islamist takeover, Islamic terrorism might not have been the big thing. So we're looking at probably hundreds of thousands of people died because of Jimmy Carter. And he claimed to be a Christian. Some of the things that he said were blasphemous and heresy. And I hope he's sincere in his profession of faith. But he uttered blasphemy, saying that Jesus Christ isn't the only way to God, and that if you love somebody, it's okay to be intimate with whoever you love. That's not what the Bible teaches. That's hedonism. And God created sexual loving. It's a good thing, but to say something like that's not Christian. That doesn't reflect biblical morality. And I don't think he should have been allowed to teach Sabbath school or Sunday school. I mean, if you're going to teach that kind of stuff, it's not appropriate for this. If you can live how you want, it's a free country. You can live how you want to live. But if you're going to stand and say, I'm going to preach the Word of God, we have to be faithful to the apostolic tradition, what Thomas and the other apostles taught, as shown in the Holy Bible and the New Testament and the Gospels, which they wrote. And I'm sorry, you don't gloat over anybody's death, but look at his legacy. Nothing good about it. He's a bad guy. I'm sorry. That's the truth. And, people think Christians are supposed to be nice, and we should be nice and kind. But there's other virtues between niceness and kindness. And Jesus was bluntly honest sometimes and said some very harsh things, especially in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is such a loving gospel, but Jesus did not mince words with the scribes and Pharisees. And we shouldn't either. Jesus said, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. In the end, being truthful benefits more people. And if you're enabling evil through kindness and niceness, in the end, that's not a virtue, it's a vice. That's not true kindness because it's harmful to people. We have to proclaim the Word of God. So, Michael Berry's a good guy. If you catch his program, check him out. But he made a egregious mistake. No, St. Thomas Christians are called Thomas and use that name because Thomas, according to the ancient traditions, went to India, and those traditions likely have a historical basis. And I've shown these artifacts that by the 300s or 400s for sure, you have a large and vibrant Christian community in southern India, which has persisted to this day. I want to say a final word real quick when I ask for prayer, because I'm showing you books from my library. And this year in Houston, a tree, we had a storm called Hurricane Beryl, and a tree fell through my library. And I'm trying to save my library, but there's still a giant hole in the wall, and the library is exposed to the elements. And it's just difficult because of financial difficulties. Because I was in the military, but because I'm a Trump supporter, woke General Burkett, enemy of the Constitution and the American people, woke General Burkett thought he'd carry out a patriot purge. He doesn't want Trump supporters in his military, so I was forced to retire. And hopefully this situation will be rectified. But as of right now, I'm totally broke, and I got hurricane damage. I'm not able to put everything back together. So just pray for the situation. Thank you. God bless you.